What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? It's Matty P here with another episode in the Steelers War Room series. We've taken a break a little bit from this series within Touchdown Under. We focused on the Mad Monday show. The Touchdown Under boys are regular, both one's live, sometimes the other one's live. So you one or two live shows each week. It's been a bit quiet without camp, not a lot of signings, not a lot of guys hustling and bustling. War Room's all about putting in the minds of Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, Art Rooney II, the front office, and the coaches is what goes on the field and how they put together a roster that will compete for a 7th Lombardi trophy. That's why we're back with another episode of this show now. Kwon Alexander did the rumors. I woke up to it this morning. I'm recording this in my evening. It will go live early morning East Coast time. But the rumor is that barring a physical, Kwon Alexander will sign with the Steelers. He was rumored earlier in the offseason to sign with the Steelers. And so I thought, why not better than to give you a 5 or 6 minute powwow on this is who Kwon Alexander is. This is what he's done. What does he bring to the mix? The simple answer is, I think he's a depth piece. Now, that's not going to surprise anyone. I'm not Nostradamus by saying this. But he may be ahead of Nick Kwiatkowski. That's the other thing. So I'm going to show you some cool stats that I pulled from my status description over from Pro Football Reference. We'll look a little bit of his alignment too, because when I went through Pro Football Focus, it was interesting to see where some of his snap count alignments are. And what that could mean is a wrinkle to this offense that defense that we may not have really thought about in the hype of the last 24 hours and the rumor that it is Kwon Alexander coming to the Steelers. So what I've done, and we'll go through this super quickly, is basically I've been able to compare 6 players, and I've been strategic in the 6 players. So we've picked Devin Bush Jr. there, who the Steelers let go, didn't renew him for his 5th-year option. Myles Jack, who the Steelers brought in for a year, didn't work, moved on. Nick Kwiatkowski, obviously, we know he's on the roster there as depth piece. Elandon Roberts, who they brought in. I didn't bring Holcomb in because Holcomb's only played 3 years in the league. He's played the same, or 4 years, sorry. He's played the same number as Devin Bush. And Mark Robinson didn't make sense to compare in this mix. Now, the reason I brought in, so Devin Bush is there, someone who's left, obviously. Everyone else has played for a lot longer. And then I brought Bobby Wagner in as like more of a gold standard, particularly because Kwon Alexander has played in 3-4s and 4-3s. In 4-3s, he's more in the inside. In some 3-4s that in schemes he's played, and you've seen him line up outside, I think he's more of the inside guy. He's just more of a pass coverage linebacker than perhaps an Elandon Roberts. Definitely more so than a Mark Robinson at this stage. And a few of the other guys you've seen over the years with the Steelers, like a Vince Williams. But obviously, so Bobby Wagner is going to be in the lead for a lot of these categories I'm going to show you. But there are some interesting things. So let's look at it. In total games played over this span of the last 4 seasons, Bobby Wagner 65, Elandon Roberts 63. So we're going to learn a little bit about Elandon Roberts, E-Rob as well. Myles Jack 55, Devin Bush 52, Kwon Alexander 49, Nick Kwiatkowski 48. So pretty close in all those things. Sack-wise, Bobby Wagner leads with 13. E. Roberts has got 8. Kwon's got 5.5. So he's done more than Devin Bush has since his rookie year. In terms of overall tackles as well, Bobby Wagner's up there, then Jack, then Bush. Bush did actually make a lot of tackles. They just weren't impact tackles, and they were, you see that with his assisted tackles. He should have way more solo tackles as a middle linebacker. Kwon's way down the list. He's got like a lot of combined tackles, a lot less assisted. So you're seeing more solo. So really, there's only 30 solo tackles difference between Devin Bush and Kwon Alexander. But Kwon Alexander's played 49 games. Devin Bush has played 52. So 30 tackles there. Like, it's not that wide a gap, really, when you look at the actual, like, who going out and meeting a ball carrier from that perspective. Tackles for a loss, you got Kwon up there at 3rd behind E-Rob. So that's kind of a really good thing. I really, really like that. Ahead of Jack, ahead of Bush, who did nothing last year in tackles for a loss for the Steelers. Really helped the Steelers back. Quarterback hits as well. He's 3rd on the list, if my memory. Yes, 3rd on the list behind E-Rob, Wagner. Again, really, really good stuff. Interceptions, everyone's kind of got 2 except for E-Rob, and then Wagner's out ahead. So it kind of evens up there. Pass defense, it was interesting when we talk about snap counts. Bush has got more, but I mean, if you're not going to be back there like making a hit, if you're not covering, you're not going to be on the field. It is still the Steelers, guys. But really, 2 pass difference between Kwon, Devin, and Myles Jack. And Kwon's played 6 games less than Myles Jack in this 4-year span leading up to now, and 3 less than Devin Bush. So we're talking like, 1 good game, fine. So there's nothing deeply to look into that. But forced fumbles, now that was kind of cool. 5 from Kwon, 3 from Kwiatkowski. 3 from E-Rob. So we've got a big hitter in here. I like that, right? I like that. And you're seeing some highlights on social media, but I like that. This is a good thing. And then approximate value. So if you're not familiar with Pro Football Reference, they apply a rating every year that you're in the league against statistically like weighted against who was the top performer in your position, right? So Big Ben in a year where they get double digits might end up with like a 13, for example. So Bobby Wagner, 54, probably not surprising anyone there. E-Rob, 27. That was a lot higher than what I thought it was going to be. Bush had 24, but he had like it was like a 9 or 11 in his rookie year. So it doesn't really, it's a bit skewed because we all know what a great rookie year he had. But Kwan had 22 there, one less than Miles Jack, a lot cheaper. So really, you're getting a depth piece cheaper than Miles Jack, probably better than Kwiatkowski, who can produce like Devin Bush. And hey, as I've gone through this, we found out that E-Rob is actually really beneficial for us more than just this run stuff, but that's sort of what he gets bandied with. Now, looking at the coverage side of things, because that's where you might see a bit from Quan Alexander. Targeted times, Bob Wagner targeted the most, makes sense, play the most games, been around the longest, starting guy always. Miles Jack and Devin Bush targeted a lot as well. Were starters over Quan Alexander in some systems, but there's not like deep variation on what he is to Devin Bush. But he only allowed 827 yards in that time on 142 targets for an average of 8.7 versus Devin Bush, 1,220 yards, almost 70% completion rate was 69%, and a 10.1 average. He also only allowed 3 TDs versus 9 from Devin Bush in the last 4 years and 10 from Miles Jack, and a quarterback rating of 83, which is actually the lowest apart from Kwiatkowski, but it's less comparable in terms of the snaps that they played. So basically what you're seeing is you've got one of the, out of all these 5 guys, apart from Wagner maybe, but Wagner's targeted a lot and he didn't have a great year last year, so some of these numbers are skewed. Quan's the best coverage guy in this lot. This was something that I've talked about with Mark a lot in this offseason, is are they missing a coverage linebacker? I wouldn't sit there and say Quan is a deep, completely known for his coverage linebacker skills. He's not going to be like a Dan Henley if they'd got him in the draft or some of the other coverage linebackers, but he is going to help. And he's going to be really helpful for new guys in the system and probably take the pressure off Cole Holcomb again, if he can pass the physical. The only thing that I didn't like is the missed tackles. You want to see that more like 9%. So that is one thing. But when I show you where he lined up last year, that may come into play without us sitting here and watching hours of tape. The final thing I want to show you before we go to that, and before we wrap up the show, defensive snaps. So these you see in the yellow bar are defensive snaps based on the snaps they played in the games that they played in. So how many defensive snaps were there in the game? How many did they play? He only had 39.5% there. Wasn't a starter there. Devin Bush, 59%. Miles Jack, 72.6%. They played a lot more snaps. That means, though, they've got more time on the field to make mistakes. Fine. So that's unfair to them. They've got more time to do things. And you saw the production up there. So, in fact, imagine if Quan Alexander had 50% of the snaps, 48% of the snaps, right? Particularly if the Steelers are playing in sub-package schemes. Now, we actually got a video coming out later today, which is based on our live that we did the other day around, could the Steelers be gearing up to play a 4-3? Having Quan Alexander helps the Steelers if they want to play some 4-3 schematics as well. So you have to stay tuned for that video. They only played one snap last year, 4-3. But those moves they're making, the versatility of some of the players, I feel like we're going to see some more 4-3. But let's wrap up this show on Quan Alexander. So one thing that probably you're not going to hear anywhere else on any other video is that Quan Alexander lined up at slot corner 126 snaps last year. 126. Lined up in the box 386. Lined up in the D line 44. And he's lined up about 25. He averages about 50 snaps a year or so in the slot. But he played 558 snaps last year and 126 in the slot. More than 20% of his snaps last year were played in the slot. In fact, it's getting close to more like 25%. That's something you're probably not hearing a lot of people talk about. I wonder what the Steelers are thinking in this versatility. It's kind of crazy. Played a lot less outside last year compared to the 2 previous years where you started seeing him play more outside in some 4-3 schemes. But yeah, the slot part, I find that very, very interesting. Particularly when we talked about his coverage skills back here compared to some of the other guys as well. This could be a really smart move for the Steelers, and it could be one of the few gaps that they had on this roster, particularly if you listen to our show this week, the Touchdown Boys. If you didn't, go back and listen to it, but if you did, you know we talked about coverage linebacker probably being the only part of the defense apart from another strong safety that's not locked down. So absolutely love the move. Let's see what happens, and let's see if he passes the physical. He's got to do that first, and we know players sometimes don't pass the physicals. But with that, I'm Matty Peverill. This is Steelers Warring. That's your wrap-up video on who is Kwon Alexander.